The Hermit by Tuesday Lobsang Rampa. Read for you by BlueFriend in beautiful BC. Chapter 7. The young monk turned over and shivered. Sleepily he rubbed his eyes and sat up. The entrance to the cave was a dim grey blur against the blackness of the interior. There was a sharp sting to the air. Quickly the young man put his robe about him and hastened to the entrance. Here the air was cold indeed, with the wind moaning through the trees and making the leaves rustle. Small birds nestled close to the trunks on the lee side. The surface of the lake was roiled and turbulent, with wind-driven waves pounding against the bank and making the reeds bow down in protest against the force. The newborn day was grey and troubled. Sweeping black clouds billowed over the mountain ridge and swept down the slopes like sheep being hounded along by the dogs of heaven. The mountain passes became hidden in clouds as black as the rock itself. Still, the clouds came swooping down, obliterating the countryside, drowning the plain of Lhasa in a sea of rolling fog. A sudden gust of wind and a cloud formation swept over the young monk. So thick it was that he could no longer see the cave entrance, nor could he see his hand placed before his face. Slightly to the left of where he stood, the fire hissed and spattered as the moisture drops fell upon it. Hastily he broke sticks and piled them upon the still glowing fire, and blew that the sticks would more easily ignite. The damp wood spat and smoked and was long in waking to flame. The moaning of the wind rose to a shriek. The clouds became thicker, and the violent pounding of hailstones drove the young monk to cover. The fire hissed and slowly died. Before it was quite extinguished, the young man dashed out and seized a branch which was still aflame. Quickly he dragged it to the mouth of the cave, where it was sheltered from the worst of the storm. Unhappily, he dashed out again to rescue as much of the firewood as possible, firewood that now was streaming with water. For a time he stood panting after his efforts. Then, removing his robe, he wrung it out, expelling most of the water. Now the fog was invading the cave, and the young man had to feel his way in by holding on to the rock wall. Cautiously he made his way further in, until at last he collided with the great rock beneath which he was wont to sleep. "What is it?" queried the voice of the old hermit. "Do not worry, venerable one," replied the young man soothingly. "The clouds have descended, and our fire is all but extinguished." "Never mind," said the old man philosophically. "There was water before there was tea. Let us therefore drink water, and postpone tea and sampa until the fire permits." "Yes, venerable one," responded the younger man. "I will see if I can rekindle a fire beneath the overhanging rock. I saved a burning branch for that purpose." He made his way out to the entrance. Hailstones were falling in torrents. The whole ground was covered with ice pebbles, and the gloom was even more intense. There came a whip-like crack, followed by the deep rumble of thunder, a rumble which echoed and re-echoed around the wide valley. From nearby came the slithering of falling rocks, and the ground shook as they made their impact upon the mountain base. One of the frequent rock falls started by the vibration of the thunder or perhaps a great rock had been split by the lightning. The young man wondered if any other hermitage had been swept aside like a feather in a gale. For a time he stood there listening, wondering if he could hear a call for help. At last he turned away and stooped over the glowing branch. Carefully he broke small pieces of twig and fed the flames anew. Dense clouds of smoke arose and were blown valleywards by the storm, but the flames, sheltered by the rocky outcrop, grew apace. In the cave, the old hermit was shivering as the chill, wet air seeped through his thin and tattered robe. The young monk felt his blanket, and that too was saturated. Taking the old man by the hand, he led him slowly to the cave entrance and bade him sit. The younger man carefully pulled the flaming branches closer so that the old one could feel the heat and be cheered. "I will make some tea," he said. "We now have enough fire." So saying, he hurried back into the cave for the water can, and soon returned with it and the barley. "I will tip out half the water, and then we shall not have to wait so long. And anyway, the fire is a little small for a full can." Side by side they sat, protected from the worst onslaught of the elements by the rocky overhang and by the side outcropping. The clouds were thick, and no bird sang or moved. "There will be a very hard winter," exclaimed the old hermit. "I am fortunate that I shall not have to endure it. When I have given all my knowledge to you, I can lay down my life, and I shall be free to depart to the heavenly fields, where once again I shall be able to see." He mused in silence for a moment, while the young monk watched the slow steam form on the surface of the water. Then he continued, "It is hard indeed to wait all these years in total blackness, with no man to call friend, to live alone in such poverty that even warm water seems a luxury. The ages have dragged by, and I have spent a long life here in this cave, journeying no further from it than I have now journeyed to this fire. For so long I have been silent that even my voice comes forth in a veritable croak. Until you came, I have had no fire, no warmth, no companionship during the storms, when the thunder shook the mountain and the rocks came tumbling down, threatening to wall me in." The young man rose and wrapped the fire-dried blanket around his elder's thin shoulders, and then turned back to the water can, the contents of which were now bubbling merrily. Into the can went a generous lump of tea brick. The bubbling ceased as the cold particles brought the water below the boiling point. Soon the steam rose again, and into the water went the borax and the last of the sugar. The newly peeled stick was brought into energetic use, and a flat piece served as a scoop to remove the worst of the twigs and debris from the surface. Tibetan tea, China tea, is the very cheapest form of tea, consisting of floor sweepings from the better grades. It is the residue left after the women have picked the plants of all the choice leaves and thrown aside the dust. The whole is compressed into blocks or bricks and carried over the mountain passes to Tibet, where Tibetans, who can afford nothing better, obtain the bricks by barter and use it as one of the staples of their hard existence. Borax is a necessary additive, as the raw tea is so crude and rough that stomach cramps are frequent. A definite part of the ritual of tea making consists of scraping the surface clear of debris. "Venerable one," asked the young monk, "have you ever been to the lake? Never wandered up to that large stone slab to the right of this cave?" "No," replied the hermit. "Since I was brought into this cave by the men from space, I've never been further away from it than the point where we sit now. Why should I? I cannot see what there is about me. I cannot travel with safety to the lake, for I might fall in. After the long years in the cave, in darkness, I find that the rays of the sun are troublesome to my flesh. When first I came here, I used to feel my way to this point and be warmed by the sunlight, but now, for many a long year, I have remained inside. What is the weather like now?" "Bad, venerable one," replied the young monk. "I can see our fire. I can see the faintest outline of a rock beyond, but all else is blanketed by this greasy grey fog, the storm clouds from the mountains, a storm from India." Idly he examined his nails. Very long they were, uncomfortably so. Casting about, he found a strip of rotten stone, burned rock flung out from the mountain by some volcanic upheaval ages ago. Energetically he rubbed the slip of rock against the nail of each finger until it was worn down to a suitable length. Toenails, too, they were thick and hard, but far too long. Resignedly he hoisted up one foot and then the other, until at last he had all his nails trimmed to his satisfaction. "You cannot see any pass?" queried the old man. "Are the traders fog-bound in the mountains?" "They most certainly are," exclaimed the young man. "They will be telling their beads in the hope of keeping the devils away. We shall not see any traders this day or night until the fog lifts, and then even the ground is covered with frozen hail. It's thick here." "Well then," answered the old one, "we should get on with our talk. Is there any more tea?" "Yes, there is," replied the young monk. "I will fill your bowl, but you must drink it quickly, for it's cooling rapidly. Here it is. I will put on some more wood." He paused to place the bowl in the old man's outstretched hands, and rose to throw more wood on the cheering fire. "I will fetch some more wood from out of the rain," he called, moving into the thick fog. Soon he returned, dragging branches and twigs which he had placed around the perimeter of the fire. Proximity to that heat would soon cause the steam to rise and the wood to dry. "Well, venerable one," he said, seating himself near the old man, "I'm ready to listen when you are ready to speak." For some minutes the old man remained silent, probably reliving in his mind those long past days. "It is strange," he remarked eventually, "to sit here as the poorest of the poor, as one poor even among the poor, and to contemplate the wonders which I have witnessed. I have experienced much, seen much, and been promised much. The keeper of the heavenly fields is almost ready to welcome me in. One thing I have learned, and you will do well to remember in the years ahead, is this. This life is the shadow life. If we do our tasks in this life, we shall go to the real life hereafter. I know that, for I have seen it. But now let us continue with that which I am charged to tell you. Where was I? He hesitated and stopped for a moment. The young monk took the opportunity to throw more wood on the fire. Then the hermit spoke again. Yes, the air of tension in that rock chamber grew and grew, and I was the most tense of all. Reasonably so, for all the risk was to me. At last, when the tension had reached an almost unbearable point, the Admiral uttered a command. There was a movement of some technician near my head, and a sudden click. Immediately, I felt all the pains of hell surge through my body. It seemed that I was swelling and was about to burst. Jagged lightning flashed across my brain. My empty eye sockets felt as though filled with glowing coals. There was an intolerable wrenching, a sharp, painful snap, and I went spinning and whirling through, I felt, all eternity. Crashes, bangs, and horrendous noises accompanied me. Down and down I fell, spinning and tumbling head over heels. Then I felt as though I were in a long black tube of woolly, clinging material, and at the top of the tube there appeared a blood-red glow. Now the spinning ceased, and I began a slow, slow ascent towards that glow. Sometimes I slid back, sometimes I halted, but always a terrible, inexorable pressure drove me on again, painfully, hesitantly, but always upward. At last I reached the source of the blood-red glow and could go no further. A skin or membrane or something obstructed my passage forward. Again and again I was forced against the obstacle. Again and again I was prevented from proceeding. The pain and the terror increased. A violent surge of pain and a terrible force behind me slammed me again and again against that barrier. There was a screaming, ripping sound, and I was propelled at vast velocity through the crumbling barrier. Upwards I sped until my consciousness dimmed and was extinguished by the appalling shock. There was a fading impression of falling. In my brain a voice was dinning, "Get up! Get up!" Wave after wave of nausea engulfed me. Ever that forceful voice exhorted, "Get up! Get up!" At last, in sheer desperation, I forced open my eyes and stumbled to my feet. But no, I had no body. I was a disembodied spirit, free to roam anywhere in this world. This world? What was this world? I looked about me, and the strangeness of the scene grew upon me. The colors were all wrong. The grass was red, the rocks were yellow, the sky was of a greenish cast, and there were two suns. One was blue-white and the other orange. The shadows! There is no way in which to describe the shadows cast by two suns. But worse, stars were showing in the sky, in daylight. There were stars of all colors, reds, blues, greens, ambers, even white. nor were they scattered as the stars to which I was accustomed. Here the sky was covered with these stars, as the ground is covered with stones. From afar came noises, sounds. By no stretch of imagination could I call these sounds music, yet I had no doubt that it was music. The voice came again, cold and implacable. Move, will yourself where you want to go. So I thought of floating to the spot from where there came the sounds, and I was there. On a level patch of red grass, with the purple and orange trees fringing the edge, there danced a group of young people. Some were clad in garments of startling hues, others were not clad at all, yet these latter excited no comment. Off to one side others sat on seats on legs and played instruments, which is quite beyond my ability to describe. The noise they made is even more impossible of description. All the tones seemed to be wrong, and the beat had no meaning to me. "Go among them," commanded the voice. It suddenly occurred to me that I was floating above them, so I willed myself to a clear patch of grass and thought myself upon it. It was hot to the touch, and I feared that my feet would scorch, until I remembered that I had none, and was there only in disembodied spirit. The latter was soon made apparent to me, a naked young female chasing a garishly clad young man ran right through me, and neither of us felt a thing. The young female caught her man, and linking her arms with his, led him off behind the purple trees, from the locality of which they were, came many screams and shouts of joy. The users of musical instruments went on misusing them, and everyone seemed to be remarkably content. I rose upon the air quite without my own volition. I was directed as is a kite directed by the boy who holds the string. Higher and higher I rose until afar I could discern the glint of water. Or was it water? The color was a pale lavender, which gave off flashes of gold from wave crests. The experiment had killed me, I decided, and I am in limbo, in the land of the forgotten people. No world could have such colors, such strange things. "No," muttered that inexorable voice in my brain. "The experiment was a success. You will have a commentary now on all that happens, that you may be the better informed. It is vital that you comprehend all that is shown to you. Pay great attention." Pay great attention? How could I do anything else? I wondered ruefully. I rose higher and higher. From afar came the glitter of burning gleams upon the skyline. Strange and fearsome shapes stood there, like devils at the portals of hell. Faintly I could discern bright spots, which dipped and rose and shot from shape to shape, and all around there were vast roadways which radiated away from those shapes as the petals of a flower radiate from its center. All this was a mystery to me. I could not imagine the nature of that which I saw, and could but float there, amazed. Abruptly, I found myself jerked into motion again, and with increasing speed. My altitude lessened. I descended, quite involuntarily, to a point where I could discern individual homes dotted along each of the radiating roadways. Each home seemed to me to be at least the size of those of the highest nobles of Lhasa. Each contained within a quite sizable plot of ground. Strange metal things lumbered across the fields, doing those things which only a farmer could describe. But then, as I was brought much lower, I discovered a very large estate, which consisted mainly of shallow water, in which there were perforated benches. Wondrous plants were resting upon the benches, and their roots trailed in the water. The beauty and the size of these plants were immeasurably greater than those growing in the soil. I gazed and wondered at these marvels. Again, I was lofted to whence I could see far ahead. The shapes which had so intrigued me from afar were now much closer, but my bemused brain was not able to comprehend that which I saw. It was too stupendous, too utterly incredible. I was a poor native of Tibet, just a humble priest who had never been any further abroad than one short visit to Kalimpong. Yet here, before my astonished eyes, did I have eyes? Loomed a great city, a fabulous city. Immense spires soared perhaps 1,800 feet into the air. Each spire or tower was beringed with a spiral balcony, from each of which radiated slender, unsupported roadways, joining the whole into a web more intricate than that spun by spiders. The roadways were thronged with speeding traffic. Above and below fluttered mechanical birds laden with people, each avoiding all others with a skill which filled me with the utmost admiration. A speeding mechanical bird came upon me. I saw a man in the front staring, but seeing me not. My whole body contracted and writhed with fear at the thought of the impending collision, yet the contraption sped on through me, and I felt it not. What was I? Yes, I remembered. I was now a disembodied spirit. But I wished someone would tell my brain that, for I experienced every emotion, and principally fear, that a normal, complete body would have experienced. I loitered among those spires and dangled over the roadway, and I discovered new marvels. Certain high levels had stupendous hanging gardens, incredible playgrounds for what were obviously nobles. But the colors were all wrong. The people were all wrong. Some were vast giants, and others were dwarfs. Some were definitely human, and others very definitely were not. Some, indeed, were a strange mixture of humanoid and avian, with the body seemingly of human construction, yet possessing a definitely bird-like head. Some were white, some were black, some were red, while others were green. There were all colors, not merely hues and tints, but definite primary colors. Some had 4 fingers and a thumb on each hand, yet others had 9 fingers and 2 thumbs on each hand. And one group had 3 fingers, horns extending from the temples, and tail. My nerve broke at the latter sight, and I willed myself up fast. From my new altitude, the city clearly covered an immense area. It extended as far as I could see, but at one distant side there appeared a clearing which was free of tall buildings. Here the air traffic was intense. Shining dots, for so they appeared from this distance, soared with eye-baffling velocity in a horizontal plane. I found myself drifting towards that district. As I approached, I discovered that the whole area seemed to be made of glass, and upon its surface there was strange metal craft. Some were spherical in form, and seemed, from their direction of travel, to journey beyond the confines of this world. Others, like two metal balls stuck rim to rim, also appeared to be for out-of-world travel. Yet others were like the spear that is thrown, and I observed that these, after rising to a predetermined height, then became horizontal and journeyed to an unknown place upon the surface. There was stupendous movement, and I could scarcely believe that all these people could be contained within one city. All the inhabitants of a world were congregated here, I thought, but where was I? I felt panic rise. The voice answered me, saying, "You must understand that the earth is a small place. The earth is as one of the smallest grains of sand upon the banks of the happy river. The other worlds of this universe, in which your earth is located, are as numerous and as diverse as the sand, the stones, and the rocks which line the banks of the happy river. But this is just one universe. There are universes beyond number, just as there are blades of grass beyond number. Time upon earth is just a flickering in the consciousness of cosmic time. Distances upon earth are of no moment. They are insignificant and do not exist compared to the greater distances in space. Now you are upon a world in a far, far different universe, a universe so remote from the earth, which you know, that it would be beyond your comprehension. The time will come when the greatest scientists of your world will have to admit that there are other worlds inhabited, and that Earth is not, as they now believe, the center of creation. You are now upon the chief world of a group numbering more than 1,000. Each of those worlds is inhabited. Each of those worlds owns allegiance to the master of the world where you are now. Each world is entirely self-governing, although they all follow a common policy, a policy aimed at removing the worst injustices under which people live, a policy devoted to improving conditions of all who have life. Each world has a different sort of person upon it. Some are small, as you have seen. Some are large, as you've also seen. Some, by your standards, are grotesque and fantastic. Others are beautiful, angelic, you might say. One should never be deceived by outward appearances, for the intention of all is good. These people owe allegiance to the master of the world upon which you now are. It would be useless and a strain to your intelligence to try to give you names, because the names would have no meaning in your own tongue, in your own comprehension, and would merely serve to confuse you. These people owe allegiance, as I have said, to the great master of that world, one who has no territorial desires whatever, one whose main interest it is in the preservation of peace. Peace, so that all man, no matter his shape, his size, or his color, may live out the days allotted to him, and devote himself to good instead of the destruction which will ensue whenever a person has to defend himself. Here there are no great armies, there are no battling hordes. There are scientists, traders, and of course priests, and there are also explorers, those who go about to remote worlds, ever increasing the number of those who join this mighty fellowship. But none are invited to join. Those who join this federation do so at their own request, and only when they have destroyed weapons. The world upon which you now are is the center of this particular universe. It is the center of culture, the center of knowledge, and there is none greater. A special form of travel has been discovered and developed. Here again, to explain such methods would be to overtax the brains of the greatest scientists of the earth. They have not yet reached the stage of thinking in 4- and 5-dimensional concepts, and such a discussion would be gibberish to them until they can rid their minds of all those beliefs which have so long held them captive. The scenes you now see are the leading world as it is today. We want you to travel its surface, to see its mighty civilization, a civilization so advanced, so glorious, that you may not be able to comprehend. The colors you see here are different to those you're accustomed to on Earth, but Earth is not the center of civilization. Colors are different on each world and depend upon the circumstances and the requirements of each of those worlds. You will look about this world, and my voice will accompany you, and when you've seen enough of this world to make its greatness apparent, you will travel into the past, and then you shall see how worlds are discovered, how worlds are born, and how we try to help those who are willing to help themselves. Remember this always. We of space are not perfect, for perfection cannot exist when one is in the material state of being in any portion of any universe. But we try, we do the best we can. There are some in the past, as you will agree, who have been very good, and some who, to our sorrow, have been very bad. But we do not desire your world, the earth. We desire instead that you should develop it, that you should live there. But we must ensure that the works of man do not pollute space and endanger the people of other worlds. But now you will see more of this, the leading world. I mused upon all these worlds, said the old hermit. I pondered deeply on the portent behind the remarks, because it seemed to me that all this talk of brotherly love was but a sham. In my own case, I thought, is one which shows up the fallacy of this argument. Here am I, admittedly a poor and ignorant native of a poor, arid, undeveloped country, and absolutely against my wishes I was captured, operated upon, and so far as I knew, forced out of my body. Here I was. Where? The talk of doing so much for the good of humanity seemed rather hollow to me. The voice broke in upon my disturbed thoughts, saying, "Monk, your thoughts are vocalized to us by our instruments, and your thoughts are not correct thoughts. Your thoughts, indeed, are the fallacies. We are the gardeners, and a gardener has to remove dead wood. he has to pluck unwanted weeds. But when there is a better shoot, then sometimes the gardener has to take away the shoot from the parent plant and even graft elsewhere, that it may develop as a new species, or even develop more greatly as its own species. According to your own beliefs, you have been rather roughly treated. According to our beliefs, you are being given a signal honor, an honor reserved for very, very few people of the world species, an honor reserved. The voice hesitated and then went on. Our history goes back billions of years of Earth time, billions and billions of years, but let us suppose that the whole life of your planet, which you call Earth, was represented by the height of the patala, then the lifetime of man upon the Earth could be likened to the thickness of one coat of paint upon the ceiling of one room. Thus it is, you see, man is so new upon the earth that no human has the right to even attempt to judge what we do. Later, your own scientists will discover that their own laws of mathematical probabilities will indicate clearly that there is evidence of the existence of extraterrestrials. It will also indicate that for real evidence of extraterrestrials, they must look beyond the far reaches of their own island universe and out into other universes beyond that which contains your world. But this is neither the time nor place to indulge in a discussion of this nature. Accept the assurance that you are doing good work and that we know best in this. You wonder where you are, and I will tell you that your disembodied spirit, only temporarily detached from your body, has journeyed beyond the furthest reaches of your own universe and has gone right to the center of another universe, to the center city of the chief planet. We have much to show you, and your journey, your experiences are just beginning. Be assured, however, that what you are seeing is that world as it is now, as it is at this moment, because in the spirit, time and distance mean nothing. Now, we want you to look about to familiarize yourself with that world upon which you now dwell, so that you may the more easily credit the evidence of your senses when we come to much more important things, because soon we shall send you into the past through the Akashic record, where you will see the birth of your own planet, Earth. The voice ceased, said the old hermit, and he stopped for a few moments while he took a sip of his tea, which was now quite cold. Reflectively, he set aside his bowl and clasped his hands together after rearranging his robe. The young monk rose and put more wood upon the fire and pulled the blanket more tightly round the old hermit's shoulders. "Now," continued the old man, "I was telling you that I was in a state of panic. Yes, indeed, I was in a state of panic, and then as I dangled over this immensity, I found myself dropping. I found myself passing various levels or bridges between great towers. I found myself dropping down to what appeared to be very pleasant park, raised on a platform, or so it seemed, so supported to me. There was the red grass, and then, to my astonishment, at one side I found green grass. There was a pond in the red grass which had blue water, and another pond in the patch of green grass which had heliotrope water. About the two were congregated an amazing assortment of peoples. By now I was beginning to distinguish somewhat which were natives of the world and which were visitors from afar. There was something subtle in the bearing and comportment of those who were native here. They appeared the superior species and fully aware of that status. About the pools there were those who appeared possessed of great masculine virility, and those who were extremely feminine. A third group of people who were obviously epicene. I was interested to observe that all the people here were quite naked, except that the females wore things in their hair. I could not distinguish what they were, but they seemed to be some type of metal ornament. I willed myself away from that spot because some of the sport of these naked peoples was not at all to my liking, having been brought up from my very earliest days in a lamasery, and so in an entirely male environment. But I dimly understood the purport of some of these gestures which the females were indulging in. I willed myself up and away. I sped across the remainder of the city and came to the outskirts where the habitation was sparse, but all the fields and plantations were marvelously cultivated, and many large estates were, I perceived, devoted to hydroponic farming. But that would be of little interest other than to those studying agronomy. I rose higher and cast about for some objective to which I might direct myself, and I saw a marvelous saffron sea. There were vast rocks infringing the coastline, rocks of yellow, rocks of purple, rocks of all hues and tints, but the sea itself was saffron. This I could not understand. Previously the water looked a different color. Gazing upwards, I perceived the reason. One sun had set, and another was rising, which made 3 suns. And with the increasing ascension of the third sun and the descent of one other, the colors were changing. Even the air appeared of a different tint. My bemused gaze beheld the grassland blurred by land, a broad river, a spit of land, and again changing its color. From red it turned to purple, from purple it turned to yellow, and then the sea itself gradually changed color too. It reminded me of the manner in which at eventide, when the sun was setting low over the high-ranging mountains of the Himalayas, colors would sometimes change, and how instead of the bright shining of day in the valleys, a purple twilight would form, and even the high snows would lose their pure white and appear to be blue or crimson. And so, as I contemplated the matter, this was no great strain upon my comprehension. I surmised that the colors were always changing on this planet. But I did not want to go over water, never having seen much before. I had an instinctive dread of it, and a fear that some mishap might occur, that I might fall in. So I directed my thoughts inwards, inland. At this, my disembodied spirit wheeled around, and I sped for a few miles over rocky coastline and small farm areas. And then, to my ineffable delight, I found that I was over terrain which was somewhat familiar. It reminded me of moorlands. I swooped low and saw the little plants nestling together on the face of that world. Now, with the difference in sunlight, they appeared to be little violet-colored flowers with brown stems, akin to heather. Further along, there was a bank of that which, under this lighting, resembled gorse, yellow gorse, but here the plant had no thorns to it. I rose 100 feet and gently drifted along over this most pleasant sight which I had seen on this strange world. To these people, no doubt, this would be a very desolate area. There was no sign of habitation, no sign of roads. In a pleasantly wooded dell I found a small lake, and a little stream trickling over a high cliff tumbled into it and fed it. I lingered a while, watching the changing shadows and their very-hued fingers of light permeating through the branches above my head. But there was this continuous urging that I should keep on the move. I had the impression that I was not here for my own amusement, my own pleasure, my recreation. I was here that others could see through me. I was lifted again and flung high in the air and prodded into extreme speed. Beneath me, the sea. Against my will, I was propelled over that sea until I came to what was no doubt another land, another country. Here the cities were smaller, but entirely vast. Accustomed, as I was now, to size, they were small, but much, much larger than anything I would ever hope to see upon the earth, which I had now left. My motion was checked rather abruptly, and I went into a steep spiral, swirling around, and then I looked down. Below me was a most wonderful estate. It appeared to be an ancient castle set in the midst of woods. The castle was absolutely immaculate, and I marveled at the turrets and battlements which surely had no place in a civilization such as this. As I was pondering upon the matter, the voice broke in. "This is the home of the Master. This is a very ancient place indeed, the most ancient building in this ancient world. This is a shrine to which all peace lovers come, that they may stand outside the walls and give their thanks in thought for peace, for the peace that encompasses all who live under the light of this empire. A light where there is never darkness, for here there are 5 suns, and there is no dark. Our metabolism is different from that of your world. We do not need the hours of darkness to enjoy our sleep. We are arranged differently." End of chapter 7.